Hi guys, in this video I'm going to give you 5 tips that will help you during the speaking test. My previous video looked at 5 tips for what to do to prepare for the speaking test, but this one is all about what to do while you're sitting in front of the examiner doing it. Basically game day, alright? So let's begin. I'll get straight into it with tip number 1. My first tip, and I think this is the most important one, and this summarizes everything, is to speak in your own natural style. A lot of people speak really well to their classmates if you're in an IELTS class like I would run, or maybe to their friends, they speak really well, and then in the test they speak differently. That's not the idea. There is some bad teaching around. I got taught this when I started teaching IELTS, that in the speaking test you're supposed to speak formally, especially in part 3, that you should use formal words like furthermore and thus and nonetheless, etc., etc. That's all rubbish, okay? You need to just speak naturally like you would to any other person. Focusing on that stuff is not going to help you at all. So remember that, okay, speak the way you speak to your friends. That's the most important thing. Let's go to my second tip. The second point, and this is a very important point as well, is to focus on communicating your ideas. Don't focus on all the other things that you might be worried about. So in your preparation, you might have worried about pronunciation and grammar and all that sort of thing. In the test, focus purely on communicating a message, communicating your ideas, and making sure the examiner understands you. Think of it like this. The examiner wants to know a bit about you, your personal history, a few personal facts, and they might also want to know your opinion on some things. That's part 3. So all your job is to communicate those things about you very clearly. If you just focus on doing that, everything else will take care of itself. Let's do point 3. A lot of people get really nervous about the speaking test, and I think partly that's because they feel that if they make a mistake, say, bomb a sentence, have a bit of a unnatural pause, that they're going to ruin their score. This isn't really true, okay? That's not something you need to worry about. Usually when I meet a new student, within about 10 seconds, I know roughly what their IELTS score would be, just from the way they say hello, their accent, their confidence. You very quickly get a good idea of what level that student is at. So this test has like 12 minutes for the examiner to get a picture of what you would speak like usually. So if you bomb one sentence or even 1 minute or have a bad section, it doesn't really matter. The examiner, when he sees you or she sees you, will have an idea of, I think this person is like a 6.5 or a 7. And over time, the rest of the test, they're basically going, maybe 7, 6.5, 7, sounds like a 7. Yeah, it's a 7. Okay, that's probably what they're thinking. You don't have to worry about one word screwing you over or a bit of grammar. Sometimes I hear students, they say, oh, teacher, I said this word and it's wrong. Will that ruin my score? And it's like, no, one word, one sentence, one little bit will not ruin your score, okay? It's 12 minutes. You don't need to worry about that. Just make sure that you're showing the examiner your best and your most natural English. The fourth point is to make sure you give yourself freedom in the test. Now, what do I mean by giving yourself freedom? I mean that you need to allow yourself to let go a little bit. So if you don't want to say much about a particular question, you haven't got much to say, you think it's a rubbish question, you don't need to say too much. But if you've got a question that you've maybe got a story, like, oh, I've got a story that can tell the examiner more about my opinion on this, go for it. You don't have to go, 3 sentences for part 3, 2 sentences for part 1. Don't be thinking like that. Be thinking, I've got something to say here, and let yourself go. Don't be afraid about expressing a particular opinion, Okay, you're not getting judged on your opinions. If you don't know anything about something, you can say it. It's like, look, I don't know much about this, but this is what I think. Or, you can be very honest and very natural. If your friend asked you a question about, some strange political thing, you might say, look, I don't know anything about politics, but this is what I think might be the case. And that's the same in the test. You can be very honest. You can be very relaxed. Okay, you don't have to limit yourself to 2 sentences here, 3 sentences here. Give yourself freedom to speak in the way you want to speak naturally. A big problem people have is they get really nervous. They think, oh, my whole life boils down to this day. And it kind of does. It is a big deal, the test. But the speaking test is probably not going to depend very much on your performance on the day. People speaking is remarkably consistent. Really, your speaking score, is determined before you do the test. So all that preparation you've done, like I talked about in the last video, all the speaking to your dog, okay, all the work on your pronunciation, the work on your grammar, the fixing of errors, all of that work is what gets you the score. Okay, like if you talk to Michael Jordan or George St. Pierre, like a famous martial artist, they'll tell you your confidence comes from your preparation, and IELTS speaking is just like that. Okay, if you've done the hard work and improved your speaking, on test day, your score is already done. Okay, your score is, all you've got to do is be normal, and your score will reflect what you've done in your preparation. So remember, it doesn't really, your speaking score doesn't really depend on the day. It depends on the months and years before that day, because unless you do something really bad and completely break down or use a terrible strategy in the test, just being normal will give you the appropriate score that you've prepared to get. So don't feel that your speaking score will bounce around on the day. If you do 2 tests and you go, ooh, one test I got a 7, the other one I got an 8, that's probably because your examiner was different, okay? Examiners are terrible when it comes to being consistent in the speaking test, in my experience. Writing examiners are much more consistent, probably because there's less of them and they know what they're doing more. Anyway, the point is your score is determined by your preparation. Don't panic too much. I'm sure your speaking on the day will reflect pretty much how you always speak. And that's the goal. Speak how you always speak in the test. In the next video, I'll give you 5 tips in terms of things to avoid, in terms of mistakes to avoid. Remember, if you need writing help, particularly, I'm at passyourilts.net. That's my website. And if you like general tips about IELTS, I have a tip most days on my Facebook page at Pass Your IELTS, the Facebook page. All right, I'll see you in the next video.